Hey there, and welcome to the final day of Superman Week here on the channel. So wrapping up, I thought I'd take a look at this new Treasury edition that came out from DC Comics this week. So this is the Superman Treasury 2025 Hero for All. Now this is the first new Treasury edition that DC has done for quite a while, and this might be the first time they've officially called one a Treasury edition, because I know that was sort of the term popularized by Marvel back in the 70s, but everybody kind of uses that term for this format book now. And so these are larger books that are closer to the size that the original art is drawn at for a comic book before it's, shrunk down. And so kind of as a comparison here, here's a sort of standard size comic book in relation to this larger Treasury size. So yeah, these are big books. Of course they cost a little more because of that. But it's been quite a while since DC has done one of these. I believe the last one they did was in 1999, and I believe it was this one here, Superman Fantastic Four. And it was written by Dan Jurgens, who is the writer of the new one that we just got. And so this was the Superman Fantastic Four crossover where Superman teamed up with the FF and they fought Galactus. And so we got a nice Dan Jurgens cover here painted by Alex Ross. So kind of a neat collab from them back in the day. But this one here, as I said, is written by Dan Jurgens. And the art is by Bruno Redondo, who I really liked on his Nightwing run with Tom Taylor. I just thought that was a great run on that book. And this is part of DC's Summer of Superman, kind of in conjunction with the new James Gunn movie that's coming out. Speaking of that, I was able to go to an advanced screening the other night, and I really liked the movie, but I'm not here to talk about the movie. But once I read this, I got to thinking this is a great companion piece to the new film. So if you really like the movie and you want a comic to read, I would recommend this. I'm kind of surprised they're not selling this comic at theaters, to be honest with you. Because I believe there is a variant movie cover that they made too for this issue that seems like that's sort of the perfect thing to sell at the theater. They sell popcorn buckets and cups and toys and all kinds of stuff. Sell a comic book. They give them away at movies now and then. I remember back in 1992, I did buy the Batman Returns movie adaptation comic book at the theater when I saw the movie. So I feel like this is an easy sell. But again, let's get into the book here. So yeah, opening up. So yeah, we've got, big art. We've got an ad here for the new issue of Superman that's about to come out. So yeah, definitely want to let people know if they like this, what to keep reading with Superman. So we start off here on the rooftop of the Daily Planet, where we've got Lois and Clark and John, and then the Kents, Clark's parents here. And so then Clark and Lois are wanting Ma and Pa Kent to kind of take John with them. So something's going on. They're trying to get out of town. You'll note, though, too, it's a younger version of Jonathan here. It's not the current version of the comic books. So I feel like continuity-wise, this kind of takes place a few years ago in the Superman comics. So John hasn't had his time dilation growth spurt thing yet. And again, this is closer to like how old the character was when Dan Jurgens was writing the Lois and Clark book a few years ago. But then we see, what's going on here. We've got this giant robot tearing through Metropolis. And we've got Bruno Redondo here really taking advantage of the sort of larger format, the sort of widescreen kind of effect that Treasury size or bigger size comics will give you. So yeah, and again, just the scale of this is really nice. The angle with the buildings and just, the destruction. Again, really a good way to tie in to a movie. Just like a big summer blockbuster movie. That's kind of the tone you get on this book throughout. So just real quick, we've got Dan Jurgens on the story credit here, Bruno Redondo on art and cover, Caio Felipe ink assists. So I feel like that means Bruno Redondo's probably doing some of them. Adriano Lucas on color. The color on this is great. The color throughout this book is fantastic. Works great with Redondo's art style. We also have a little sequence here, Resurrection sequence art by Dan Jurgens, Brett Breeding, and Adriano Lucas. Again, Dan Jurgens and Brett Breeding from, the 90s back in the day with Superman. They worked on, you know, the Death of Superman issue and all that stuff back in the day. So they are contributing some art to this special too. So yeah, then we've got Superman fighting the robot here. Really kind of great dynamic action. You really feel the movement in Redondo's art here. Really kind of feel the impact when Superman hits the robot. And then he kind of forces it into the bay here. And then kind of in the aftermath, Superman and Lois have this sort of confrontation with Luthor. And so, like, he's defeated the robot, but obviously there's something else going on here. So Superman flies off into space. And we get this flashback scene in Smallville where Clark is, a kid. And so they're out at the Kent farm here. And so we have Clark, Lana Lang, Pete Ross, Kenny Braverman, who, if you've been following Superman comics long enough, especially back in the 90s, we know he becomes Conduit, the supervillain, and then Lex Luthor is there too, and they're all, playing soccer. And then a tornado hits, and so Pa Kent kind of gets everybody down into a cellar. But now, at the end of the sequence here, it looks like Jonathan, Pa Kent here, has died. Now, he was just in the book a couple pages ago in the present day. So, something was going on here, not sure what yet. Then we cut to the Watchtower, the Justice League headquarters, and Green Arrow and Black Canary are on monitor duty here. And they see that something's coming through. And so we get this shot that kind of goes through the Watchtower. And we have these giant, spaceships showing up. We've got like a whole fleet here in the background. And then they destroy the Watchtower there. Now, another thing, too, with this Treasury book being so big is, these are typical comic book pages, but it's such a larger size. It's like the whole thing is a little flimsier than I would really want it to be. Now, the cover is a thicker cardstock, too, there. So it's not just like a typical comic cover, but I would really like a thicker stock. And again, a hardcover version of this would be nice too. And it would look pretty good on the shelf, I think. So kind of be careful when you're reading this. I've got it laid out on the table here. But yeah, it'd be real easy for this thing to kind of flop over in your hands and that kind of thing. So just kind of be careful when you're reading. We've got this other flashback sequence here where Clark has sort of inherited the farm in Kansas and is working it. And Lex Luthor shows back up, kind of telling him he needs to make more of himself and do something else with his life. And, Ma Kent is kind of giving him permission here to leave. Again, not, how that played out typically in Superman's past, but, is this a different continuity for this special? Not really sure what's going on yet. Then it cuts to the Batcave, and so the Batman family is sort of in the cave trying to figure out what's going on with this alien invasion, and then we have the rest of the superheroes kind of coordinating attack against them, but Superman's missing. They don't know where he is. And so a lot of politicians are taken to Atlantis, so Aquaman's keeping them safe underwater there and out of harm's way. And then we have just the aliens kind of running amok in Metropolis here, and then Wonder Woman shows up. Now we cut to sort of outside of town. The Kents are taking Jonathan away. They're just kind of cutting through a field trying to get away from the traffic jam. And these aliens kind of descend on them there. And then Steel shows up to kind of save the day. Again, we've got a nice big action splash page here. And now we kind of cut back to the flashback where Luthor has apparently gotten Clark a job at the Daily Planet. And he's introduced to Lois Lane, who apparently is seeing Lex Luthor now. And he's starting to question, kind of what's going on around him here. Then we've got the heroes trying to figure out what's going on. We've had Martian Manhunter kind of telepathically coordinating the heroes. He's been taken out by the aliens. And now we have the big reveal here of the villains. So we have Cyborg Superman and Lady Maxima are kind of behind the alien invasion here and what's going on. And now Cyborg Superman comes from the Death of Superman story back in the 90s. He was one of the 4 replacement Supermen that turned up. Turns out he is a villain who can kind of control, technology and kind of form with it. And so his goal was kind of to sort of destroy Superman's legacy. And Maxima was a Superman villain, again, from kind of the early 90s, who was like an alien queen, and her kind of goal was to make Superman her mate and use him to kind of further her line. But, kind of be her consort sort of thing. So it makes sense that, these are the characters behind like an alien invasion. And then we've got another good big splash page here of Wonder Woman taking out Cyborg Superman. And I don't think that they've ever fought before, too, so it's kind of neat seeing that here in this issue. Then we've got Batman showing up at the Batmobile. Right as Cyborg Superman's getting ready to shoot Lois Lane, the Batmobile shows up to kind of deflect the shot, and he grabs Lois. We've got Cyborg Superman landing on the Batmobile here, trying to stop him. But then Lex Luthor shows up to kind of save Batman here from Cyborg. And then we get this kind of short fight between Lex Luthor and Cyborg Superman. Again, I don't think they've ever faced off necessarily. But then we've got Batman taking Lois away and kind of giving her kind of the backstory here on Maxima. Again, that shot there, pretty obvious reference to this cover here. And then we're getting kind of the backstory on Cyborg Superman here. So again, good, I've been reading these comics for decades. I know who these characters are, but this is a nice way to kind of fill in new readers and kind of get people more involved in the story by knowing who they are. And we've got Jonathan and Mom and Pa Kent kind of making their way through the woods. And then we're back to this sort of flashback, which seems to be kind of progressing through time here. So now we have an older Clark Kent who apparently has become editor of the Daily Planet. And we've got Jimmy here, but now he has an eye patch. And so Lois and Lex show up with their kids. And Superman kind of freaks out at that, knowing, this is not how things are supposed to be. He's not accepting this. And now he wakes up. He's been trapped in this sort of simulation. And that's kind of what's been going on here. Maxima's trying to kind of keep him subdued here. And by, giving him this sort of fantasy life. And so now we're kind of cutting back and forth. So we have Superman's fantasy, Batman and Lois in the real world kind of talking about the conflict. We've got the Kents trying to get away from the aliens. And we're kind of just cutting back and forth here over these couple pages. And now this is the sequence by Dan Jurgens and Brett Breeding here on art. And so this is Superman kind of coming out of the sort of trance. But as we go, we're kind of getting the history of Superman here. Again, great, way to introduce all this stuff to new readers. Again, another reason I think they should have been selling this comic at movie theaters. But, it's just a real nice primer on Superman. We've got a lot of the classic villains in here. Got the Justice League. We goes through the death of Superman here and the return, and then some of the other, Superman Red and Blue, marrying Lois, Imperiex, Manchester Black. Here's Conduit that we, talked about earlier in the video. So that is Kenny Braverman, who went to school with Clark back in Smallville back in the day. And the concept with that is basically like this guy would have been the football star had Clark not been there. And, he kind of realizes eventually he finds out that Clark is Superman and that, his, legacy was taken away from him by an alien sort of thing. And then, we've got Jonathan, their son, coming into it. And we've got some stuff here with Jor-El. And then we've got Jonathan kind of teaming up with Damian Wayne Robin. And then we've got Superman kind of waking up here now finally and kind of using his heat vision to shatter the sort of goggles that have been placed over him there. And yeah, so great 2-page spread here. Back to Bruno Redondo on art now. Yeah, you can just really feel the force of him breaking out of this machine here. I don't know how well it's showing up here on camera, but, we have a lot of halftones and different kind of patterns that I'm sure are being accomplished digitally here, but really just adds a real sense of motion to the art here. You know, we've got the lines getting kind of jagged, kind of continuing that energy here. Got kind of the splatter of, you know, this liquid that's in there with them kind of going everywhere. Just a nice kind of forceful page. We've got a really nice, almost sort of intimidating shot of Superman here, where basically the blue of his suit is in silhouette, and the red is kind of the only color of his costume there. Again, something Dan Jurgens would do kind of now and then in the 90s. It makes for a really nice kind of shot of Superman, and so, a lot different from how he's normally portrayed. Then we have Superman kind of confronting the alien fleet here. Again, just nice, just two big panels on this page too. So just really nice use of the format here. And so we've got Lois and Batman kind of looking at a map, trying to figure out what's going on, and then saying that, oh, all these ships are being taken out immediately. And so they realize, oh, Superman's got loose. This is him kind of zigzagging around, taking out the alien crafts. And, we've got, pretty aggressive use of heat vision here, too. Nice kind of fading effect on that. Then we cut back to Earth, where the aliens are confronting the Kents here and Jonathan, as Superman kind of shows up, zaps him with his heat vision, takes off back to Metropolis. And then we've got Maxima here finding out that Superman's escaped. We've got a nice kind of technical readout effect here going over Cyborg Superman's mechanical half here. And then we have Cyborg Superman here crashing in on Batman and Lois. He's found them. And this is an interesting ploy by Batman here. And again, I don't know if anyone's tried this with Cyborg Superman, but because Cyborg Superman has Superman's DNA in him, Batman tries to wield kryptonite against him. I don't really feel like anyone's tried that before, but something Cyborg Superman says is, doesn't matter if you can't use it, and so he kind of zaps him with heat vision there, and he uses this laser beam to kind of knock it away. Again, something Superman should probably do more often than he does in the comics, but what are you gonna do? So yeah, so we've got Cyborg Superman here kind of grabbing Batman, and he's pulling back his mechanical arm here to kind of smash him. And then Superman shows up at the last second, kind of knocks Cyborg Superman out, and got a nice big sound effect here that they're kind of crashing through. Great use of that. Just really kind of conveying the sound of what's happening here. And then we get nice big 2-page spread of all the heroes showing up. And then we've got the Green Lanterns kind of showing up to subdue Cyborg Superman. And Superman saying he's going to go after Maxima himself. And so we have this horizontal panel here where the action is technically vertical as Superman's flying off into the sky, but it's kind of been tilted here. Then Superman shows up on the ship here going after Maxima. And then, they come back down to Earth here and fight. Again, kind of showing Maxima's power. She's no slouch herself here, even though she commands this army. And again, thinking, why Superman should be her mate, as they're kind of compatible power-wise. But then Superman grabs her, starts spinning her around here, and slams her into a building, which we're going to assume is evacuated at this point. Again, the alien invasion's been going on for a while here, so shouldn't be anybody in that building. So then we kind of see the cleanup here. A lot of the heroes have stuck around to kind of fix Metropolis up, and we've got the Kent family back on the rooftop here, the Daily Planet. And so they note that Superman's going to go down and kind of help the restoration efforts. And we end on this nice big 2-page spread. Superman flying over the city. Again, this is kind of what I'm talking about with the colors here. This is a good panel. Technically, it's executed very well. But again, that just kind of big sunset in the background really kind of takes it to the next level. We've got a bunch of heroes sort of scattered along here, fixing the city. We see Zatanna kind of taking a bunch of bricks up to this building here to fix it. We've got Green Lantern kind of fixing up the side of the building here. Looks like we have Dr. Fate using magic over here. And then if you note, we've got Elongated Man and Plastic Man kind of wrapping themselves around this building, fixing that. You don't see them in stories together very much, so it's kind of neat seeing that here. And so that's the end of the story, and we have a couple pages here of like character photos from the movie and kind of backstory on the different characters and kind of talking about the actors and that kind of thing. So yeah, I got this nice, kind of poster image here. Again, another reason to just kind of have this in theaters when people see the movie. And so then we have ads for the new Superman books that are coming out, and then some of the kind of classic collections here. And we've got the DC Nation thing where they're talking to Nicholas Hoult about playing Lex Luthor here. We've got an ad for action here, and we've just got this nice big back cover with the logo on it. So yeah, that's Superman Hero for All that just came out. Again, I think this is a great story. My only concern is the format might keep people away, just being so big. And, it is a pricier book. I think, what's the cover price on this? $14.99. So yeah. And I know there's variants that are more expensive too and that kind of thing. But yeah, don't let the price deter you on this one, because it is a really good read. We've got a great story. We've got great art by Bruno Redondo here. Again, Dan Jurgens has written a lot of Superman. I almost feel like they should have split up the art as Bruno Redondo doing the modern day sequences and then Dan Jurgens doing the flashback sort of brainwashed sequence. I don't know, maybe that would have given away what was going on too quickly. But I feel like Jurgens also knew, hey, I could do a bunch of pinups here of classic Superman scenes and probably make a pretty penny selling that original art, that kind of thing. So who knows? A good book, definitely worth picking up. Can't recommend this enough. Feel like you can figure out when this story takes place, but it's almost like a timeless Superman story. I don't think this is too bogged down in continuity or anything like that. I think in 10 years, you'll be able to read this book just fine. I feel like this could be like an evergreen Superman story. But yeah, it's definitely worth reading. And again, if you like the Superman movie by James Gunn, I think this is what you read next, maybe. Have you read this? Let me know in the comments below what you think. Again, this is the end of Superman Week here on the channel. If you want to see the previous videos, I have the Superman playlist on the channel you can check out and watch all the videos I've done this week. And thanks for watching. If you'd like to follow me on social media, I'm on Twitter/X at Detective651. Also on Instagram at Detective651. Be sure to check out my t-shirt store at tpublic.com/user/Detective651. I've got a lot of nerdy designs on there, and there's sales all the time, so check it out frequently.